David, thank you for joining us here on Nuclear Heat on 93.7 The Ticket. It is an honor, honestly, to have you. Obviously, as a broadcaster, I always like to pay a little bit more attention to the ring announcers myself. But for those that don't know, again, David Penzer joining us. He's got a new book out called Sitting Ringside, Volume 1. And this is from your time at WCW and TNA as the ring announcer. Primarily WCW covered in this book. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's my life story. Crazy ride of how I got in the wrestling business, where so many things had to go right that should have gone wrong. And then we end at the end of WCW going out of business, basically with me walking out of the power plant, for the last time after the WWE told us all what we were doing or not doing. And then while they were doing that in the power plant, took our laptops and shut our computers down and said you could only go out once to your car, and you have to be escorted by a security person.
That is very interesting, because I was going to ask you as we have this. Oh, go ahead.
I just gave away the end of my book. I don't think I'm very good at this book stuff.
Hey, that's a good little insight for our interview, at least. But yeah, and heck, I'll tell you what, with that kind of ending, I definitely want to know the story, and we'll get to a little bit of here. But of course, we're going to get more to that when we get the book, Sitting Ringside, Volume 1. But what I was going to ask you throughout this interview is, interestingly enough, no work with WWE. Was it that kind of situation that soured any opportunity with WWE? Did they ever reach out to you?
Yeah, I had a meeting with John Laurinaitis and Jim Ross. They were going to run it as a regular, separate than WWE. That was the plan. That never happened, obviously. And if that happened, I was going to be the ring announcer. So I agreed to a job that never came to be, and that's the story of at least the Volume 1. Something cool I want to talk about, if you got a second, about this book, is it didn't start out as an autobiography. It started out as I found a bunch of old, really rare, never before seen formats and internal memos in WCW, and I wanted to find a way. I came upon them when I was cleaning out my desk, and I wanted to find a way to A, get them out, and B, if I'm being honest, monetize them, because real estate isn't going nuts like it was a couple of years ago, and that's what I do for a living. So I put a copy of I took a picture of a Saturday night format, WCW Saturday Night from 1995, and I put it on Twitter, and I was like, would anybody be interested? And so Guy Evans, who did the Nitro book and Eric Bischoff's second autobiography, reached out to me and said, let's do a scrapbook. That's great stuff. People are going to love that stuff. Nobody's ever seen stuff like that before. Like the last Nitro format is in the book. I mean, I don't think it's been made public, made for public consumption. So originally it was going to be a scrapbook with me telling some stories like I am here, and selling the behind the scenes stuff. And I thought that was pretty cool. Get the not less. There's certain packages. You go to davidpenzerbook.com. It's also available on Amazon. But if you go to davidpenzerbook.com, there's packages where you could actually get, not in the book, it's still in the book that you get, but you could actually get the Nitro format or the Thunder format where David Arquette won the world title, and stuff like that. And, it'd be really cool to take the last Nitro format to WrestleCon and get Flair and Sting to sign autograph on their page, the last main event ever for WCW Monday Nitro. You can that up in your office. So that's what it turned out to be. And then I was told by Guy, your story's so compelling, and your thoughts on the ride of WCW and the people and the talent are so fun that we're going to do autobiography too. And I said, if you think so. I said, I think people will buy it for the formats, and hopefully they read my story and they dig it. But it just came out last Wednesday, but from the limited response I've gotten, people seem to really dig book. David Penzer book, davidpenzerbook.com.
Okay, yeah. So that's where you can get it again. Sitting Ringside, Volume 1. We're talking with David Penzer, WCW and TNA ring announcer for a long time. So let me just ask you, David, because, and we can get into that. I mean, when you drop names like, Sting and Flair and even in Arquette, that brings back a lot of WCW memories. And it is, I guess I can ask you just what you kind of think about AEW being the main competitor with WWE now. Does it, it's on, TNT and all that. And they borrow some of the stuff from WCW. Do you feel like it could be headed to a place, or is it a place where WCW was once competing with WWE on the Monday Night Wars?
I think so, and I think the world of those people and everybody there. I have a lot of good friends there, and I got to know Tony Khan pretty well for this brief time that he was coming to Nashville during the empty COVID tapings when Kenny Omega was the world champion. The guy would never let me buy him a drink. I was like, one of these days you're going to let me buy you a drink, and then I never saw him again. But it was just, not that it was any big deal. It was just like a challenge. Anyway, he obviously feels like he wants to do more of a New Japan style of television, where it's based around matches and match quality and dreams and stuff like that, and less, not totally not storyline based, but less storyline based. And that's a conscious decision. My son loves New Japan, loves AEW, doesn't watch WWE or but doesn't hate him either. Like, some people take sides. It's like,
Yeah.
It's the wrestling business. I guarantee you there's nobody in any wrestling company, either one of those companies or TNA, that's saying, hey, I hope the other one's this is out of business, and I hope they fail because they have friends there, or the potential they might get a job there, or at least be able to negotiate a better offer, knowing that a place like AEW is there and taking guys, so and paying good money. So I can assure you that the fans want to take sides, but I can assure you obviously the wrestlers are passionate about the company they work for, and that's to be expected. But I'm assure you that they don't wish for the failure of anything. We saw that happen with WCW, which is what the book is all about, and that didn't go. How is it up in Omaha?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going pretty well. We're in Lincoln, Nebraska, pretty close to Omaha.
I googled the radio station, and it showed something that was in Omaha, Lincoln, Nebraska. WCW ever come to Lincoln, Nebraska?
Say it again.
Did WCW ever come to Lincoln, Nebraska?
See, I'm at a age where I only saw WCW. I went to one WCW event, but I was like 8, so I don't remember. I don't think that was a TV. I think that was just a house show, but I don't know if they did or not.
I think we did for a house show, but I think that we didn't do. I'm pretty sure we didn't do TV there.
Yeah, that could be. I remember as a kid. One, and just telling my own story here, is that I was really excited to see Rey Mysterio Jr. at the time, and he had to cancel out. So I was glad to see him a couple years ago to kind of make up for one of my childhood things that didn't go right. But I did see Ric Flair and Sid Vicious that day. I don't know if you would remember. I don't know if you'd remember the specific day, but I think that's the event that I went to.
But yeah, Rey Mysterio changed the business. Basically single-handedly. I tell a story and I go into more depth about it. But when Rey Mysterio came, we all knew Rey Mysterio was coming in, but nobody really, for the most part, other than like Dean Malenko and Benoit and those guys, nobody had met Rey Mysterio. And I don't think anybody understood or were prepared for just how short and small he was. Yeah. And you could hear murmurs, respect to Conan, nobody said anything, out loud, and you could hear murmurs, of, we didn't realize he was this small. And I'd tell you, I'd say 30 seconds into the match, nobody said another word ever about his size. I mean, he's transcended the business. He's changed the business for the better. He's an incredible talent. It's so cool that he's still doing what he's doing with all the wear and tear that he has, and that his son's doing it now. I remember Dominic when he was 3 years old, and so that's really cool. But I mean, this is what a great guy Rey Mysterio is. Him and Conan were doing WrestleCon, and there was like a line. You ever see have you ever been to like one of the wrestling conventions and the headliner has like a line like twice around the building? They got to do once around the outside and then on the inside. They had a line like that. And I came up and I just to say hello to Conan and Ray Ray, just shake their hand. And Ray said, "Stop! Don't send anyone more." And sat there and had a 5-minute conversation with me about how much he missed the days and how much fun it was and what am I doing and all that stuff. So I mean, yeah, he didn't have to do that, but he's a great guy and a tremendous talent. Mad respect for Rey Mysterio. Wish you would have got to see him in Lincoln, Nebraska, but you got to see him down the road.
Yeah, I'm glad that I was able to. And you got so many stories, with so many people in this book, which is exciting. I was kind of looking up your profile and some of the memories of. First of all, how about this Chris Jericho losing match where he went on a losing streak and did not like the fact that you're announcing the winner. So you got a little bit involved in into the wrestling, actually, not just as a ring announcer. Is that right?
Yeah, I used to ride with Chris and Eddie and those guys sometimes, and Chris had talked about doing that. He had talked to Terry Taylor about getting it approved, and we would talk about it. Most 99% him because he's brilliant on stuff like that. But I'd say, there might have been like maybe an idea or two that I might have come up with. I'm not taking credit for any of it, but it was cool to be involved in that creative process, which I got to be towards the end of WCW officially in the creative meetings. But that was my first taste of it. And it was really cool for me as a, wrestling fan since I was 11 years old, being absolutely addicted to the business, to be able to, have a, even if he would have said, "Shut up, Penzer, that's a horrible," everything I said, which I think he only said that 90% of the time. But even if he said that, just to be able to bounce ideas off somebody about something that was going to air on professional wrestling on TV was like so cool. And I will say this, it's my belief that he's the greatest of all time at different characters. He's taken so many different characters and gotten them over and made money with them. I can't think of anybody else who's changed their characters and made it work every freaking time. And different companies and stuff like that. So, and he thinks of the little things, the whole thing where he would tear off my tuxedo jacket, then he'd take my chair and he'd bang it against the post. So then the next week he'd come out with a new tuxedo jacket and a chair. Like, I don't have a chair. I'm sitting in a chair. I'm in a building filled with 5,000 chairs. But it's little stuff like that nobody else would have thought of, that he thinks of, the whole clicking of the pen when he did the "you're on the list" thing. Most people would just do the "you're on the list." The whole clicking on the pen got a pop. I mean, it's just the small things he does that are so good. And he's gonna read the book, and he's gonna have me on his podcast. So I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, absolutely. We'll look forward to that as well. Once again, this is David Penzer with us here with his new book, Sitting Ringside, Volume 1, longtime WCW and TNA ring announcer. I did want to get to the ring announcing a little bit for you, because I do, at times, some of the ring announcers are supposed to be, I don't want to go as far as say like the stagehands that wear all black or anything, but they're not supposed to be necessarily part of the show. They just kind of talk. You wear that cummerbund and bow tie tuxedo. Was that something that you had to go to WCW about, or just to kind of stand out a little bit more? Did they want you to do that, or how did that kind of come about?
No, I found a really cool place in Fort Lauderdale where I lived at the time. Really cool, when I went to buy tuxedos and shirts, because I needed multiple tuxedos because of the schedule. Eventually it became that, I didn't even have time some weeks to take it to the dry cleaners. So a place that had really cool cummerbund and bow tie combos. And since, I really didn't have another way of, Ric Flair could wear a yellow robe with green tights and green boots. And, one day he could wear a red robe with white tights and white boots. I wore a tuxedo. So it just, nobody gave me the idea. I didn't ask anybody. It just kind of happened organically, which is how most cool things happen. And, I didn't like pick in advance which one I was going to wear, whatever I was feeling that night when I was getting for the show, I would put on. And yeah, was never doing it to try to stand out. I was just doing it to try to put, a little bit of my personality into my outfit.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of became something you're a little bit known for. Now, let me ask you this too: as a ring announcer, what kind of goes into that for the day? Like, you have note cards, preparation, rehearsal, all that sort of stuff. Like, what is the day of a ring announcer on the day of a show?
Well, it's pay-per-view is different than a TV taping, let me put it this way: a live show is different from a a TV taping. When I was with Impact just until recently. We live pay-per-view, and then we do the next day. We tape 2 episodes of Impact, so that wasn't live. But I mean, even going back to Nitro and Thunder, it was the same thing. Live TV, a lot of sound checks, a lot of making sure everything works. You can't do it again. You can't start again once the clock turns to 8 o'clock or 7:30 for the pre-show, whatever. I mean, you got to go out there and do it. So it's a lot of preparation, not as much for the TV tapings, mostly we were in the same city. But when they didn't have to take apart the stuff, so they just left everything the way it was. So it was more just go out and do it. But yeah, I write down notes, and I write down some of these, and I used to write down things to say to the audience when I first started 30 years ago. But you get used to that, and and that's really what I was. You didn't hear me very often on WCW. There's a reason for that I get into in the book in detail. But you didn't hear me that much. So my job really was to make sure the live crowd was involved, happy, knew what was coming up, was excited to see it, and get with it.
Interesting. Do you watch current WWE?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Bloodline storyline.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we can get to a little bit of that, and this actually kind of goes in that. I was just kind of wondering because it was maybe a moment at WrestleMania after the whole Cody finishing the story where Samantha Irvin, who I'm a big fan of as a ring announcer, let her emotions kind of get into it. I mean, she was basically in tears as she was trying to announce the winner. And I think that kind of brought something a little bit extra. But I mean, I think other people would say that maybe it was a little unprofessional. I haven't heard anybody say that. I'm just kind of thinking as I heard it was kind of like, well, do they want her doing that? What was your kind of opinion when you heard her basically in tears announcing Cody Rhodes as the champ?
Well, I was in tears announcing Sting beat Ric Flair for the last Nitro match, but that's a whole different story that I don't talk about in the book. No, I'm kidding. I wasn't in tears, but Samantha Irvin has found something special. She's found a way, and I'm not talking about crying, and that's fine. I mean, be real. People like to see real, and if that's her real emotion, then God bless her. My big question was, does she not read the formats? But that's, I don't know the answer to that. Somebody told me she doesn't read the winners and losers. I don't know that I would. Sometimes there's finishes that are convoluted, and you kind of need to know what the plan is. But what, it's working for her so far, if that's what she's doing. But yeah. I think she's found a way to put emotion into ring announcing like I've not heard anybody be able to do before. There's been a lot of women ring announcers, Mike McGurk and Lillian Garcia. There's been Dasha Fuentes. There's been male ring announcers. We all know the names, the Howard Finkles, Gary Michael Capetas of the world, Justin Roberts. But I don't think anybody's found a way to put emotion into introducing a match like she is, especially with those in-ring intros in the championship matches. She's onto something special. And I just said this on another interview, and they asked me about Samantha, and I get asked about her a lot, and for good cause, because she's really catching fire. But I don't know what her end game is. I know that she's a musician and singer, and if take this and do it for a couple of years and then get a gig as cut an album or become an actress, But if she does this for any long period of time, she's going to become a legend in this business. And even if she does it for a short time, she's already made herself in this business. She does a fantastic job. and she's done something that nobody else has figured out how to do or even thought about doing probably. So kudos to her.
Yeah, absolutely. David, do you have a few more minutes, or are you up against the clock here?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, yeah. Well, there's just a lot of storylines back in WCW that I would like to just kind of know what it's like to be in the building. And of course, you mentioned that last matchup in WCW. I guess how long did you guys know that I guess that the company was being sold? I mean, how quick of a transition this was? As it's historically kind of written, you look back and people say, well, the booking wasn't quite as solid, near the end or whatever. But I mean, was the writing? When did the writing become on the wall?
When Eric Bischoff was buying the company with Fusant Media, they were in their due diligence period. I knew some change because obviously, if they're selling the company, things are going to change. I never in a million years thought that they'd get rid of the company and for pennies on the dollar and cancel the shows until like the weekend before the last night show was really found out. So I didn't have a lot of time to prep for it, and probably a good thing because, knowing that my career might be over, luckily that didn't happen, but knowing my career might be over, probably wouldn't something that would have been good to know and walk around and have to deal with, longer than a few days. So, but yeah. And in hindsight, if you read Guy's Nitro book, in hindsight, even if the company fire, once Ted Turner lost his control of the company with all the mergers, they were going to get rid of it. They didn't want wrestling. They never wanted wrestling. Ted Turner kept that company alive against the wishes of almost everyone in the Turner Broadcasting world. And so it was inevitable that once we gave them an excuse because we were falling apart financially and talent-wise, but stories. But in hindsight, knowing what I know from reading that book, we didn't have a chance. Even if we were still number one and making hand over fist money, they were going to find a way to get rid of it. They didn't want it.
Well, it's interesting too, and we mentioned AEW coming back to TNT earlier. In The Rock even has mentioned this in his return to WWE, was like wrestling's cool again, and that's what you kind of think about when you think about WWE and WCW and the Monday Night Wars. Were like these characters. They weren't just like wrestling fans knew about them. It was they were just kind of in the mainstream culture where you could mention them and people would know what you're talking about. Do you think wrestling can get back to that?
Well, it's a different world. I mean, there was no internet. There was or very, very stage of internet. There was no Twitter. There was no Facebook. There was no, social media to speak of. So I don't think it'll ever get that big. But I mean, it's pretty darn big right now. I mean, this WrestleMania, and I'm sure they set all kinds of records and numbers, and can't even imagine how many people watched it. It was so well set up, and that main event on night 2 was so well delivered with all the run-ins and everything. It was one of the finishes that I could remember, and obviously everybody was satisfied because everybody wanted Cody to win, finish the story. But yeah, I think WWE is hitting on all cylinders with what they're trying to do right now, and they're trying to do now is not what they were trying to do when Vince McMahon was in charge. And you could say that's good or bad. Without Vince McMahon, there's probably no WrestleMania. There's probably no WCW as a national entity, and there's no Me in the Business. So, has he obviously, I think time got a hold of him, and he didn't really update his ideas as time progressed of what fans wanted to see. And obviously he did some despicable things, at least he's accused of. But I think they're for what they want to do. I think they're rolling on all cylinders. I think for what AEW wants to do, they're rolling on all cylinders. I didn't see it, but I heard Bryan Danielson against Will Ospreay was like, and that's what Tony wants that to be. They want it to be match quality and less storytelling, and whether that is going to work or not. I guess if you have a father who's a billionaire, or he's a billionaire too, and he's not just mooching off his dad. He has his own companies and stuff. But But if you're a billionaire, I guess you could, you could do what you want to do. And if you don't make as much as if you want to do another style, it's not the end of the world. So good for him. Tony's a great guy, and he's a wrestling savant, man. He can remember everything down to the detail. I mean, it's incredible. He, I don't know if you remember triple cage, 3-story cage. It was in Tupelo, Mississippi. It was like 8 guys. I think they brought in Zeus and against Hogan and Savage.
Okay.
And so I was talking to Tony after one of the Impact tapings during COVID when he would come with what's his name held the title, Kenny Omega. And and I mentioned, he mentioned that match. I think Jeep Swenson, who was in that match, who was like, was a wrestler for about a minute and a half in World Class back in the day, in their heyday. And I said, I remember when Jeep Swenson was in that 8-on-2 cage match, triple cage match in Tupelo. And I was like really proud of myself that it was in Tupelo, Mississippi, because I go to a different place every night. How am I going to remember that? Somehow I remember that. And he looked at me and he said, and he wasn't doing it to show off. He was doing it because that's what his passion is. He named the name of the show. He named the year and the in, and he named every match on the card.
Man, he's really got it. You're not wrong then. He's really got it locked in up there.
No, there was this one time that for the Kenny Omega Rich, where Kenny Omega won the belt in the empty COVID arena. I was wearing a bow tie and cummerbund set that I had worn at Starrcade, Hulk versus Sting. And he walked by me in the building before the show, and he stopped dead tracked, and he said, Starrcade, Sting versus whatever the year was, 97, 96, Sting versus Hulk. And I was like, Tony, how did you know that? He said, I just know these things, David. I said, you sure do, man. It's crazy.
That is incredible. And it's interesting too, because we had on a different show, Adam Carricker had Goldberg early on this week, and he mentioned that he thinks AEW is too cheesy. I don't know if that's necessarily, he said he's basically wouldn't consider going back there. But I did want to ask you about Goldberg, because you were obviously there for the streak and all that. Was that when he came in? Was that the plan, or did that just kind of naturally happen? At some point, you say, let's just keep this guy rolling.
I always say the best things that happen in professional wrestling, everything is organic. I'll give you Russo Day as an example. The Russo Day started organically and really got over, despite what the company at the time wanted to happen. But Goldberg was totally organic. Doing short matches just because he was fresh out of the power plant. So he'd do a 1 minute, 2 minute match, spear and the thing on your head. And it just started getting over. And so I think Mike Tenay came up with the streak, started counting how many matches that it was at house shows and TVs. And, it just grew from there. It was totally organic. I don't think anyone would tell you with a straight face that, we knew that was going to happen. We were just trying to get a guy that had some charisma and some raw talent out on TV and see what happened. And for some reason, it just went crazy. And Bill, Bill's a good guy. I haven't seen Bill in a little while, but the last time I saw him, he's a super nice guy and never let it go to his head when he easily could have.
Yeah, he seems very down to earth. And we talked a lot about WCW. I did want to quickly kind of ask you about your run in TNA, where you were the announcer from 06 to 2010, and then most recently, Impact TNA from 2020 to 2023. There was one specific thing that I read, that you got a Kurt Angle ankle lock, and Kurt Angle actually hurt you in performing that stunt. But Angle's one of my favorite, especially his intro music and just people get going there. How did Kurt Angle hurt you in the match?
It was the elbow to the face.
Oh yeah, I can imagine.
He later on told me that if he's being honest, he was afraid I wouldn't sell it, because I didn't know how to sell. He didn't know if I knew how to sell. And so he laid it in a little bit. Well, for Kurt Angle to lay it when Kurt Angle's working, Kurt Angle's laying in for him.
Mm.
So I look like the Elephant Man. There's pictures out there on Twitter of what I look like, and that the ankle lock was easy. It was the elbow to the face, and then he took off my shoes and he started hitting my head, and he told me to cover my face with my hands so they would be hitting my arms and my hands, but somehow he connected with the other cheek. So one cheek exploded from the chair, from the dress shoes, and then the other one was from the he gets embarrassed every time I see him, but he's super cool about it. And, he apologized, but well, I don't know that in hindsight he'd have done anything differently.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the kind of guy he is. He wants it to register, and if he didn't think I was going to sell it right, now I wish we could have gone over it so more, so he could have seen I could sell it right. But if he had a doubt in his mind, I think he'd have done the same thing, even if it was 10 years later. That's he takes it serious. He's a legit wrestler, obviously world champion, Olympic champion, and those aren't easy to come by, gold medals. So he was sympathetic, and he always gets when I see him and I bring it up, but I'm not sure he wouldn't do the same thing again.
Absolutely fantastic stories from David Penzer. Once again, he's got a book teamed up with Guy Evans for Sitting Ringside Volume 1. You might have mentioned this real quickly. Volume 1 implies there's a Volume 2. Is that more on Guy's side, or is there going to be more from yourself in perhaps a Volume 2?
No, we ended up the end of WCW, as I say, and then we pick up, go heavily into the XWF. Always wonder about that, and I was pretty much involved in every facet of that company. So we go into that. I have a lot of cool stuff from the formats and different things from the XWF. So there'll be a bunch of another couple hundred bonus, really cool, never before seen items, and then we go into TNA, obviously, talk a little bit about my podcast and my last run with Impact, and we haven't done the second part yet, but so I don't know exactly how it's going to end, but Guy is a wonderful writer, and I'm sure he'll find a way to make it as good as it could be.
Well, I think that's part of wrestling, right? Is you start a feud, you don't necessarily know where it's going to end, but you just kind of let it play out and then see where it takes you. So I'm very excited for that. Would encourage anybody, if you like these stories, if you want to know more, like you said, just some of the stuff that's going to be in there from WCW and back in the day. David, I could talk to you for about 2 hours, but I don't want to take up too much of your time. But it's been a lot of fun to talk to you. Once again, David Penzer, longtime WCW, TNA, and Impact ring announcer with his new book, Sitting Ringside Volume 1. One last shout out on where to go get that book, David.
You can get it at Amazon.com, or you could get that and expanded packages at davidpenzerbook.com, all one word, davidpenzerbook.com. It's free shipping either way. So it's if you want the extras, or you're interested to see what the extras are, you might want to go to David Penzer Book. If you just want to get the book and you're sold, you can go to Amazon and do it that way. But I appreciate you having me on, and if whoever reads the book, hey, let me know. Also, that you could join me on this crazy journey in professional wrestling on Twitter at David Penzer, all one word. So love for you to join me on Twitter, and what you think of the book if you read it. You could give me your honest assessment. I'm a big boy. I've been around the wrestling business 30 years, and a bad review is not going to hurt my feelings.
Well, there you go. I'm excited to jump into the book and read from those stories and give you a follow and join along as we all move forward with wrestling. Thanks once again, David, for joining us.
All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.